Welcome to the Fashionista Life podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Johnson. If you find yourself here, it may mean that you're looking for courage, clarity, or confidence in some part of your life. I interview experts in business, fashion, and life each week and share strategies for success, motivation, and mindset. Let's get started. Today, we welcome back into the studio Sue Zumstein with Quest. It's a Collier County program that provides resources needed to send hardworking students to four-year colleges and universities. It was started 25 years ago to help students achieve their goals of attending college. And we talked about this in the last podcast, but 100% acceptance rate into colleges with the Quest program.
Absolutely,
It's pretty
Jen.
remarkable.
Well, the students that we're working with are motivated.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the goal and the direction that they want to go in. And with more than 4,000 colleges in the United States, students, I think, have a lot more choices than what they realize out there. But I have to tell you, we touched on this briefly earlier. The number that's important to me is that I have to look for this year because students are just now graduating. But last year, our four-year college graduation rate was 96%.
Out of the students who attended Quest.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's what's important to me because statistically in the United States, it's nowhere near that number. And so I always look at the graduation point of, okay, every year you're in college, you're paying more money to be there. Every year you're not pulling out in 4 years, you're paying more money.
Mhm.
And think about it from a financial standpoint. You're also not working.
Mhm.
And I joke, I appreciate the seniors and the stress that they have all gone through
Right.
in
Oh,
applying to
gosh.
college. But I hate to say anything, just wait till you get to the point where your kids are finishing college, whether that's undergrad or grad school,
Oh.
and they're working on getting a job. And the pressure that they feel as young people and that you feel as a parent
Mhm.
is a whole nother level compared to what it was as we just went through the college application process.
Right. I mean, we're talking, look at their student loans and they're looking at, oh my gosh, it's the debt's piling up and this is my life. I have to get this together.
100%. Now, I have to say the majority of our Quest students never take loans,
Mhm.
thank goodness. But I think there's also that, we're heading out into the world, we're getting our first apartment, we're thinking about paychecks,
Right.
you're thinking about those responsibilities. And we certainly talk with our kids at Quest about the fact that, the lifestyle you're living now versus that your parents are providing
Yeah,
for you.
that's the key here.
Thank you. Versus what it may be if you're completely on your own. And we really want them to have that reality check.
That's going to be the interesting part. It's like, but I've always had my Frappuccino every morning from Starbucks and now I can't have it.
Yeah. So
because I have to pay for it.
we're spending $300
Yeah.
a month on coffee. I mean, I think that reality check we hope settles in sooner rather
Right.
than
Exactly.
later.
Oh my gosh. Well, now that we're talking about that, and let's say your junior and your senior, they're rounding that home plate, right? They've either there may be they ended their junior year, they're starting their senior. What do they do? What's the game plan for junior senior year? Because we kind of talked about freshmen. It all kind of starts there, and they have to make sure that they keep getting good grades throughout their whole high school career. But now, as juniors and seniors, we're rounding that home plate because you apply for college with your junior year scores.
Correct. But so the college applications come live August 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Most applications are due by November 1st. So what we just finished doing at Quest was sitting down and meeting one-on-one with every single junior family, and a few things that we really target to try to make things easier. Are they an SAT kid or are they an ACT kid?
What's the difference? How do you know?
Well, so there's what's called a concordance chart. And so we make sure that all of our students by their junior year have an SAT and ACT scores back, two official tests back by April 1st.
Okay.
And then what we have been doing for the past 6 weeks is meeting one-on-one with all of those rising senior families saying, okay, I'm going to look at the chart, same chart that the colleges use. Which test is your test? Because the sooner we can help the students narrow down which one is their test, Then we have come up with an individual plan for every family. Here's what you're going to be doing all summer.
You're studying.
Yeah. And are you taking the SAT or are you taking the ACT? And there is not, each test is not offered every month. So what we have done is come up with a
Right.
personalized plan for every individual student saying, here's what we want you to do for prep, and here's when you're going to retest. And if you need to, you can retest here and here, but you can't retest here and here. And that's important for the kids to know to be able to structure out their summer. I had a student yesterday said to me, well, I want to get a part-time job. And I looked at him and I said, well, I want you to put 4 more points onto your ACT because then that gets you $6,300 a year in Bright Futures monies.
Mhm.
Where could you work part-time this summer that you could possibly earn that much
Right.
money for 4 years of college? And he went, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, so let's look at
Reframing
it
it.
that way,
Yeah.
100%, so that we want the kids to take ownership of this moving forward.
Right.
They have to be here. I'll use a quick example. We had a terrific student who is now graduating. And last summer, he came into Quest Monday through Thursday from 9 to noon.
Graduating high school?
He's graduating high school. He was in for 6 weeks, Monday through Thursday, 9 to noon. He put 11 points
Oh
onto
my
his
gosh.
ACT score.
11.
11. And it
Wow.
changed the colleges
Of course it
that
did.
he could be applying to. And it changed the amount of money he was
Mhm.
offered for college.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know after COVID, we heard a lot of schools going test optional. Talk about that. Are there still schools test optional? Is that a benefit? Is it a negative?
Well, that's interesting. So, as we all know, our Florida State universities never went test
Right.
optional, nor did Bright Futures. There were some schools that went test optional for admissions, but not necessarily for merit scholarships.
I see.
For
There's a
fun.
difference.
There is completely. So when I did the webinar the other day with Boston University, Northeastern, and Tufts, they have all been test optional. They are continuing to be test optional, but statistically, anywhere between 40 to almost 60% of the students that they just accepted in this applicant round, they accepted with scores,
Oh,
not
okay.
without. And at some schools for this application cycle, 60 to 65% of the students that they just accepted were with scores. So I look at kids and go, I don't want you going into this process thinking I'm a bad test taker. I'm not
Right.
going. Instead, how can we get better at being successful on these tests? Jen, if we think about this, at state universities, students are going to have a midterm, they're going to have a final exam, and maybe another paper.
Mhm.
How can you say you're heading off to college, but you're not going to be great at taking tests when your midterm and your final are making up the bulk of your
Mhm.
grade for the entire semester?
Right.
We need to encourage our students to become more proficient and work on developing those skills so that they can have success in college with
Makes sense.
testing.
Makes sense. So another kind of burning question. When do they start looking for schools? I have seen kids in 8th grade looking at schools, which in my opinion, is a little early. But when should they start looking and kind of figuring out where to tour?
So
Because that's expensive.
well, it is expensive. I mean, you're flying,
Oh
your
my
hotels,
gosh.
renting cars. That's not a cheap date. And parents are taking time off from
Yes.
work to do that. Although I do just have to say, as a side note, as a parent, that was some of the most fun one-on-one times that I had with my sons doing
And I
this.
agree. I've done it with my daughter, and we went to a college where I'm like, she's never gonna go here. But we went and we even interviewed for presidential scholarships and did that whole thing. And yeah.
It's so I think the thing that's hard is I see kids change their minds a lot. You know, frequently end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, I'm hearing, there is no way I'm staying in state. There's no way I'm staying close to home. I'm going way far away. And I would have to say at least 50% of those kids end up staying in state because suddenly by senior year, they're like, I don't want to go that far away
I know,
from
I'm shocked
home.
that mine did. She's
It's
like, "Nope."
no, and I love that. So I see a lot of that. But the biggest thing I want to encourage kids to do is to become a consumer. They shouldn't be choosing colleges based on the fact that they're in the Big Ten or the ACC versus the
The SEC,
SAC.
yeah.
And I have a lot of conversations with fathers about that, disturbingly. My child
I
needs to,
believe that.
yeah, it's so that's why I still subscribe to Sports Illustrated and I can stay up on those things so that I can hang with the dads and have those
Oh my gosh.
conversations. But I want kids to start thinking about, okay, this is what I want to major in. Well, let's dig deeper. What does that curriculum look like in that
Mhm.
major? Because don't tell me that here's what I want to do, but I hate math. Well, if you look to see all the math curriculum you're going to have to
Oh
take,
gosh, right?
and so they're not diving into it. They're starting to think that here's the major and here's my career. I learned, so we have a Quest LinkedIn account and we
Mhm.
have hundreds of students that are in college and in jobs and careers that participate that we connect with through LinkedIn
Oh,
all the
really?
time that I just love. And we can go into a lot of depth on this, but think about what a great resource that is
Mhm.
for the kids in high school. But you know
Right.
what? Jobs these days in this economy are not this straight path between I have this career and it leads me in a straight path to
No.
this job. So I want kids to be open about exploring majors. What does the curriculum look like? And don't make a decision on looking at colleges based on football teams or ego or prestige.
Or school colors
Or
or with their food.
you have no, it's
Because I'm
terrible.
telling you, I've heard that. And I'm like, "What?"
Oh, and I hate
What?
the dorms, so I won't.
Oh,
And I just wrote an article for a magazine actually on college admissions that, if we have time to get into it, I can talk a little bit about that if you want to too, because when this shouldn't be about an ego trip. This
right,
shouldn't be about I got into this college.
right. With kids headed back to school, you may have a little extra time on your hands to clean out your closet and maybe theirs. Hey, maybe even have time to redecorate your house. If you're wondering what to do with all that stuff that you've accumulated, bring it all to True Fashionistas, or you can even ship it to them for free. They will sell your unwanted items for you, and they take away all the hassle by doing all the work. And all you have to do is sit back and collect your money. You can reach out to them online at truefashionistas.com. Come into the store or check them out on Facebook or Instagram, and that is truefashionistas.com. Welcome back, friends. We're back in the studio with Sue Zumstein of Quest for Success, and we're talking about college, college, college. And we were just talking about the schools and when they should start looking at them and all that kind of stuff. But when they actually go to these visits, what should they be asking? I know I have been on college tours that are so bad where they have a freshman. This is the craziest part, a freshman giving you the tour. What does that freshman know? They just started, right? And then I've been on them where they've had, an upperclassman give the tour and it was amazing. So, I
Doesn't it change
what
your impression
oh
as a
my
parent?
gosh.
It
It
makes
does.
all the difference as to who your tour guide is.
Right. You ask a lot less questions because they probably answered most of them by the
I
time you're done.
I agree. So what we do with the students in junior year is I do an entire hour and a half with all of our students saying, here are the questions you need to ask on a college visit. And quite frankly, it's a page and a half of
Oh my
bulleted points.
gosh.
And I try to break it out as to housing,
Mhm.
life, food. I try to break it out into, broad questions. What do kids do here on the weekends? I do admissions questions. And so I give the kids a cheat sheet. As you know, we had a college fair this year and we
Mhm.
had 51 colleges there. And I emailed all of my students, ninth through 12th. I said, remember to bring your cheat sheet.
Mhm.
If you need another copy of it, here it is. Because if you're a parent, you're doing tours, say you fly up to Boston and you start, you're probably going to be doing 4 or 5 in a
Right.
week,
You are.
and they all start to blend together.
Mhm.
So I encourage kids to take a notebook. I encourage them to make notes. Put your date down. What school am I at? And look at your cheat sheet. Here are the things I want to know about that. I was the mom that whenever I did this with my kids, they were slinking to the back of the tour going, okay, why is she asking the person these
I know.
questions? But you know, kids need to become consumers.
That's important right there.
It
That
is.
what you just said.
They have to. They have to take ownership of this process. But, I mean, there are some I am the twisted person who loves taking a week of my vacation, and I've drug my husband. I drug him one time to 12 colleges in 6 days in 3 states. And he was such a trooper,
Oh my gosh.
navigating, taking pictures. But that is so valuable for me then to
Mhm.
be able to share with my parents and students. So we want kids asking tough questions, and we want kids pulling the tour guides off script. And here's one thing I love to ask. I think every family should be saying to the tour guide, where else did you apply? And why did
To
you
the tour
choose?
guide.
Yes.
Okay.
And why did you choose to go to
That's a
that
great
school?
question.
I think every student they come into contact with, why did you choose to go here? If
Mhm.
you had other choices, why here? And that's kind of the things that you'll never see on the website.
That's true.
you know,
That's true.
it's not statistical data, but it can truly be an indication of, is this where I'm going to be happy living for 4 years of
Right.
my life? And will I be surrounded by people that are going to enrich my experience
Exactly.
while I'm here? Because college is valuable because of what a student gets in the classroom, but it's also valuable because of the social skills that they're having to develop and dealing with the breadth of different people.
Right. They're growing up. They're learning how to adult,
Yes.
which is hard for the parents to let them go and do that and make mistakes, but it's what they need to do.
We try to send kids off with a bulleted point list of it is astonishing to me the number of kids who've never done their own laundry
Or cook
or
or do
cook.
dishes.
Exactly. And so, yes, there are. I will never forget when my son came home after his first semester, and he obviously washed something red with his white things, so we had a lot of pink clothing suddenly. And I thought, oops, maybe I should have covered that.
That is funny.
But try to think about that as a parent. Truly, what are they going to need to know besides just what they're doing in the
Right.
classroom?
I found it interesting doing the whole college thing, college tours is when they step onto a campus, a lot of times they go, this is not for me.
Mm,
They get this feeling and they're tuned into that intuition, which as adults, we really should listen to more often than we do. Or they walk onto a campus and go, I take example of my daughter, right?
uh-huh.
And I want a small school. I don't want anything big, right? So we're touring all these small schools and we drive through the town of another very large SEC school. Like,
Mhm.
we're talking maybe 3,500 students to 35,000.
Yes.
Never would have looked at it if we wouldn't have driven through that town. And she went, I want to tour this school. We toured it. We
100%.
walked on campus and she went, I belong here.
100%. I unfortunately had the experience with my older son. We flew up to Boston and went to Boston University, which has a major highway running through the middle of campus. And he's like, nope, not even getting out of the car. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, we just got to
Now what are we
Boston.
going to do?
Right, I know. So thank goodness we had a few other tours set up. But I take your point 100%. And then there's the time when you're driving off campus and you're in the car with your child and you're having to keep your mouth shut because I do not like this place. I do not see my child there, but I don't want to. But thank goodness, in my instance, it took a half hour, 45 minutes, but I don't think I want to apply there. And I'm thinking, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
It's funny because we had the same experience. We went to a tour and my husband and I are looking at each other going, I hope because she'd already been accepted. I hope she doesn't want to go to this school. And literally an hour down the road, it was like, yeah, I wasn't really feeling it. It felt, eh.
And it's
So,
hard to keep your mouth shut, but you want
yes,
them to come to that
right.
conclusion. And as a parent, sometimes you have to have the courage to sort of back off and let that play
Exactly. We need a
out.
whole podcast on how the parents should be dealing with all of this because it's also hard when your child gets awarded a ton of money at another school. And this other school that they really want to go to, they're not really given as much. And they choose the one, of course, that you're going to be paying more money for.
Sure.
But you feel like you can't, you know, they need to go where they want to go to and where they feel it's
But that brings me back to what we talked about in an earlier podcast was that I strongly advise parents to have financial aid
Mhm.
conversations with students up front. And that's why I think it's important to be able to figure out how much money you will get from a college because there are certain colleges that only award money based on income.
Mhm.
And depending on what your income is, that's going to determine I had a student a few years ago sitting in my office, got into this college. It was 82,000 a year, just having a complete meltdown of you need to take out these loans. You need to borrow
Mhm.
against the house, mom and dad.
Oh
This
my
is where I want to
gosh.
go. And it was heartbreaking to see her going through that, but more also to see her parents going
Right.
through that. And I think some appropriate conversations ahead of time as opposed to saying, "We'll just apply to the school. Let's see if you get in
Right.
and we'll figure it out." Every time I hear that, I cringe.
Yeah.
I just cringe. That's not fair to anyone in the
Right.
family.
They need to do their prep work.
100%, the
Yeah.
parents and the students on that.
Absolutely. Well, it was so wonderful again having you on today as well. If our listeners would like to get a hold of you or Quest, how do they do that?
So my email address is sue@questforsuccess.com. And if they go on to the Quest for Success website, onto the admissions page, my cell phone is on there, um, which is good and bad, I guess. So as I said, I won't give it out over the air, but I do encourage parents to reach out. We're happy to hear from anyone. We will be closing enrollment probably the beginning of September for this upcoming school year, but we did open enrollment April 1st. And also, just as another side note, the latest we start with students is at the beginning of their junior year
Okay, that's
because our
important.
yeah, our SAT and ACT prep does start then, and it's very difficult to backtrack
Mhm.
and to get students caught up
You need
because
that time.
we can't cram for this.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you are always a wealth of information for our listeners, and I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate all of our listeners for joining me today and every week here on the Fashionista Life, brought to you by True Fashionistas. If you want a deeper dive, head to my website, thefashionistalife.com, to sign up for my weekly newsletters where I take a deeper dive each week into a new topic. Have a fabulous day.